Canada, known for its natural beauty and multiculturalism, is facing social tensions, political polarization, and economic disparity. The country's economy is on the verge of a recession, and the Bank of Canada predicts a 0.8% growth in the third and fourth quarters. Crises include affordable housing, rising living expenses, social media regulation, and the need for substantial reforms. Despite its image as almost paradise, Canada's economy is faltering. Welcome on board today. If you are interested in knowing why Canada is becoming a dystopian nightmare, stay with me. I will be enlightening you on some factors contributing to Canada's present state. Let's go! Number 1. Real estate bubble. One of the main reasons Canada is turning into a dystopian nightmare is the lack of housing. Prices of real estate in Canada from 2002 to the present, with brief dips in 2008, 2017, and 2022, are what some analysts have dubbed a real estate bubble. From 2003 forward, Canadian real estate was classified as exuberant by the Dallas Federal Reserve. Home and property prices in Canada increased by as much as 337% in certain locations between 2003 and 2018. The 2016 report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, raised concerns about rising housing costs, investment and household debt as potential threats to Canada's financial stability. The real estate market is erratic, with demand swings and lingering questions about its direction. Because of the alarming lack of affordability in the housing market, the average Canadian now pays 54% of their income, the highest percentage since 1990 for their mortgage. Severe instances such as a half-bed being rented out for $650 a month demonstrate the dire state of the rental market. There is less inventory available since sellers are reluctant to offer their properties at this time. Long-term rental homes were being snapped up by individuals due to Airbnb's lack of regulation, which affected rental costs in Canada's major areas. A substantial influence from the changes in the housing market is evident in the Greater Toronto Area's purchase price, which has dropped by 16% from the market's peak. Canada's population is growing. Number 2. Housing crisis. Rising housing costs are causing homelessness and making homes unaffordable for young people in Canada, where there is a housing crisis. Canada has seen inflation, housing inflation, and a decline in the value of the Canadian dollar as a result of the government's strong influence over interest rates and deficit spending. Government spending has an impact on Canada's urban sprawl and housing crisis. The Liberal government's lack of openness has made Canadians less trusting, while the Conservatives have proposed quotas and fines for the construction of new homes. With a need for 5.8 million new homes by 2030 and just 2.5 times the current pace of completion, Canada has the lowest housing supply per capita among the G7 countries. A significant contributing cause to the housing crisis in Canada is the mismatch between the supply of dwellings and the real demand for real estate. Because of the low interest rates, the Canadian real estate market is seeing an asset price inflation that is driving up home prices and drawing in investors. Certain Canadian provinces have a fifth of their homes owned by investors. In Vancouver, this percentage can approach 42% in some subdivisions, prompting worries regarding the supply and affordability of housing. Canada's affordability issue has been made worse by soaring property prices brought on by a mix of high demand, speculative activity, and a shortage of supply. With no significant changes to government policy, the housing crisis that Canada is currently experiencing might turn into a financial crisis. Number 3. Economic impact of government policies. When the bottom is falling out of the economy, you do not want to be suddenly raising taxes and cutting programs. You want to be providing support. The mistake of keeping the economy pushed too hard for too long resulted in the printing of too much money and high inflation. If the federal government doesn't control its spending, it will be left up to the Bank of Canada to deal with inflation, leading to higher interest rates and financial strain on households and businesses. Government spending has increased by more than 60% at a time when the Bank of Canada says inflation's been 25%. The Consumer Price Index said in some parts of the country rent increases are at 15% year over year. That's unsustainable. There is a lack of non-residential investment in Canada, hindering the ability of the growing population to earn higher wages and improve living standards. The decline in business investment in Canada is concerning and reflects a struggle to compete with the United States. The gap between output per worker in the United States and Canada is growing, as well as the gap between output per worker in Canada and other OECD countries. Number 4. Fiscal responsibility and government spending. About $6 billion of the extra $10 billion in spending is just going to service the interest payments on the debt, raising questions about fiscal responsibility. The government's failure to stick to austerity measures and the increasing level of debt servicing are alarming indicators of Canada's fiscal situation. The federal government's balance sheet has a lot of financial assets, but the interest receiving side is in trouble in a way that was never an issue before. Number 5. Middle-class, lower-class jobs. Canada is facing a new crisis. Middle-income Canadians are beginning to feel the pressure of not having enough to get by. Whereas most middle-income Canadians have been able to support themselves adequately for years, many are finding that now money is becoming tighter and harder to hold on to than ever before. In fact, according to the National Household Survey, the median income in Canada in 2010 was $61,072, but this omits several important points. Income is higher in certain types of families and lower in others. Lone parent families earn a median income of only $45,163, a mere 66% of the median income for couple families of $68,340. The struggle for single-income families to maintain a middle-income wage and support themselves has been increasingly difficult since the 1970s, when inflation increases required both parents to work in order to support a family. Now, it is almost impossible to support a family on a single salary. Even the average employment income between men and women is unbalanced. In 2010, the income for a fully employed woman was $45,857, while a fully employed man earned $54,832, an almost $9,000 difference. Even in a struggling middle-income scenario, women are still discriminated against with their income, further preventing them from being able to achieve and maintain a middle-income lifestyle. Unless this income inequality is controlled, middle-income families are going to be placed under more pressure and forced back down into the depths of the working class. More and more students graduating from university will find that their salaries will not afford them an adequate house and car. Families are already borrowing more just to make ends meet, and the average family debt in 2014 is now over $27,000 in non-mortgage debt. This includes car loans and unpaid credit card bills, and it's an all-time high for Canadian citizens. By the end of the year, it is expected to rise to almost $29,000. The cost of living is increasing, and prices are not going to decrease, but if income is not increased, middle-income earners in Canada will be forced out until only the rich and poor remain. How bad are things, really? Experts say there are several factors masking just how bad the economy really is. The first is that it usually takes about a year and a half for the full impact of interest rate changes to get absorbed into the economy. The Bank of Canada began its rate hiking cycle 17 months ago. That means the impact of the fastest, most aggressive interest rate hiking cycle in Canadian history is still to come. Second, the pandemic altered consumption habits, which haven't entirely returned to regular, predictable patterns that facilitate economic modeling. Canadians purchased a lot of stuff during pandemic lockdowns. We grabbed household goods, exercise equipment, and electronics. These days, the main purchases made by those same households are experiences. According to recently disclosed retail sales data, there was a spike in July but a decline in August. It's difficult to say how much of that is seasonal or cyclical when so many other factors are influencing customers in various ways. To address the numerous issues in Canada, such as homelessness and drug overdoses, a monumental effort is needed, including heavy regulations on large corporations and a complete overhaul of the immigration system. As we conclude our exploration of Canada's present challenges and future possibilities, let's remember the resilience and spirit of its people. If you enjoyed watching today's video, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching.